So you have both the shell casing that directly references transgenderism, and in fact, Charlie Kirk was murdered moments after he was asked a question about transgender mass shootings, and that's when the shooter filed. And so, do we have conclusive proof at this case?
Well, hold on,
no,
Senator.
But I will say this. Some of the most disturbing polling numbers that I see are the number of Democrats who believe that
Senator,
this left-wing activist was somehow Republican. I mean, that really shows the media not doing the job they should be doing.
Okay, Senator, but one moment, because you said a lot there, and we don't have a motive yet. We don't know yet. We're waiting. Obviously, we've heard what the governor's had to say, what the FBI director said today.
Come on, we don't have a motive yet.
We know
we don't have a motive yet.
What's
really?
happening with
really? That's CNN's position.
I mean, from law enforcement,
he just happened
Senator.
to fire the gun in celebration. You can't tell the motive,
Senator.
Here.
That's not what I said, and I said law enforcement hasn't laid out a direct motive. They've laid out a lot of evidence here of these messages and what the shooter said to
they've said
family
that he was a
members
left-wing
and to
activist who
roommates.
hated Charlie Kirk. Pardon?
Senator, with all due respect, you know exactly what I'm saying. I'm not arguing with you politically. I'm saying that law enforcement has not put a specific motive. You know that there's a difference of what they're putting in a legal argument than what you're talking about. And you're not even we're not even arguing about the facts here.
What you just said is false,
Senator.
Kaitlan.
No.
Kaitlan. Facts. Hold on a second. Let me answer your statement, because what you said is factually
Senator, with
false.
all due respect,
law enforcement.
With all due respect, you're putting a lot of statements that I did not say. And I want to get back to, we just laid out the facts.
You
in the
just
opening
said
of
law
the show,
enforcement has not laid out a motive.
Today.
That is objectively
and we just spoke to the
false.
Deputy Attorney General.
That is objectively false.
They
what
have not
you
set a
saying
concrete
is
motive of
objectively
exactly
false,
what it was.
And
They've
CNN
laid out
should
every
not be
evidence that we
engaged
know
in
so far.
misinformation. Caitlin, answer my question.
It's not
Have you seen the polling
Senator.
that shows the vast majority of
you were
Democrats
taking what I
believe
said
this murderer is a Republican and a Trump supporter? Have you seen that polling?
Let me get back to my questions, though, Senator, because the question here
You're not going to answer that
was
question?
actually
Are you going to answer
what
that
you were
question?
saying
You
about
have seen that
investigations that you'd like to see.
So you're not going to
Senator,
answer the
I'm the
question.
one asking the questions here.
That was CNN host Kaitlan Collins trying and failing to have a discussion with my Texas Senator Ted Cruz about the narrative that has come to dominate the killing of right-wing provocateur Charlie Kirk. And there's a reason why that interview was not only so contentious, but also so incoherent. And it's because the response to Kirk's death in the media has largely been contentious, which I guess was to be expected, but yes, also incoherent. I know that interview clip was hard to follow, and I'm not even gonna try to parse through what was said because I don't really think it matters. The gist of it was that Ted Cruz was trying to say that Robinson was a leftist, or that he was corrupted by left-wing ideologies, and Collins was saying that officially it is not known that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk specifically because Robinson was a leftist and Kirk was not. So on the day that Charlie Kirk died, that morning, I think I had done a video for Rebel HQ about Texas professors and how they are fleeing the state because Texas has become adversarial for them to teach here, and Charlie Kirk was killed later that day. But that night, I flew out of town. If you watched the Young Turks that Friday, you would have seen that I was in LA. So I did host the show from the studio that night, and while we did cover a story about the aftermath of the shooting on that show, I never did a video or anything about it. I'm not really active on social media either, so I never made a post about it. But naturally, I was paying attention to the discussion that was surrounding the shooting, because how could I not? And it was all very difficult to follow. A few things stood out to me, and I'm sure many of you have noticed these things too. So starting with the most obvious, something we saw demonstrated in that clip, there was an immediate response from the right blaming the entire left for his killing. Objectively speaking, it is obvious how they got there, even though they were accusing the left, who by the way is famous for condemning violence, gun violence in particular, before they even knew who the shooter was. Then we had FBI Director Kash Patel, who seems to be well on his way out of a job, saying that he had caught the guy before they had. Then, when they did actually know who the shooter was, Patel celebrated catching the guy in record time, even though he hadn't done anything. Robinson had been handed over to the authorities. Once Robinson had been identified, we all learned that he was just some random white guy from a red state with a religious background. He had been raised also in a Republican family, so he wasn't exactly the picture of terrorism that Republicans love to purport to their base. So now you have the left saying that he was right-wing and the right saying that he was left-wing. It's entirely possible that he was neither. We don't have enough evidence one way or the other to say definitively, but even if he turned out to be aligned with one side more than the other, it does not matter. Speaking generally and broadly for the left, even if he did identify as a member of the political left, it doesn't change the fact that what he did was wholly wrong and unacceptable. It doesn't change the fact that the political left does not condone violence, not gun violence, not political violence. And it doesn't change the fact that many prominent voices on the left have said as much since Kirk's assassination and even before Kirk's assassination. And while I don't think finger pointing is generally helpful, all of these claims of the left celebrating and encouraging this kind of violence are just absurd. Whenever gun violence or political violence happens, the left is the first to cry about it and raise alarms and demand that measures be taken to prevent that kind of violence from occurring in the future. The right tends to excuse it, offering little more than their very weak thoughts and prayers, while reminding us that we all need to protect the Second Amendment, even if it means that some people, even children, will die as a result. When Nancy Pelosi's home was broken into and her husband brutally attacked, not by a shooter hundreds of feet away, by the way, the response from the right was either to ignore the story or to laugh about it on social media. When elected Democratic leaders and their families were targeted, shot, and killed in their homes, where was the outrage from the right? When Governor Josh Shapiro's home was burned down, where was the outrage from the right? When Trump supporters were waving banners saying, "Hang Mike Pence," when January 6 rioters wheeled a guillotine to the Capitol, when Capitol Police were attacked by the same group of people who supposedly backed the blue, where were the condemnations on the right of political violence? When Brian Kilmeade just last week suggested on live television that homeless people should be involuntarily euthanized, why did it take him several days to sort of retract his statement? I'm not saying that there haven't been insensitive or unacceptable responses to Kirk's assassination from people who identify as members of the left. There have been, and of course members of the right are going to hold up those nobodies as being representative of the entire left. Here in Texas, a random college student was jailed for speaking negatively online about Charlie Kirk, which is an actual violation of the First Amendment. Cancel culture is not a violation of the First Amendment, regardless of what the right loves to say. Jailing someone for saying something you don't like absolutely is. Either way, I don't find that people celebrating Kirk's death are in alignment with my own personal values, nor do I find them in alignment with the values of most leftist or liberal leaders and voices. But I've talked quite a bit about left versus right in this video, discussing the narrative surrounding Kirk's shooting because I had to, because that's how the story is being presented to the public. However, an important perspective to consider is that Robinson maybe wasn't on the far right or the far left. Maybe it's not about that. This kid was perhaps chronically online, which I've always said can dangerously skew a person's view of reality and the world around them, making their worldview far more narrow than it is expanded. He was also 22 years old, which I understand is technically an adult, but at the risk of sounding ageist, people that age can often fall into the trap of feeling that they understand so much more about the world than they do. Again, I'm speaking super generally here. Everyone, regardless of age, is susceptible to having their thoughts and thinking and even their personalities and their core values influenced and compromised, and that is something we should all constantly be aware of. With Gen Z in particular, I kind of feel for them because they're the most online generation this world has ever seen, in the sense that they're the original digital natives. So to be clear, I'm not condemning all online platforms or activities. They are a reality that we all need to get used to if we aren't already. I'm just saying that we as a nation need to be cognizant of the online ecosystems that we create and engage with. On that note, as a member of the leftist or even just left-leaning media, there are games that are played when trying to win the algorithm. Even for independent media, there is money involved in that it takes money to run platforms like this one. And as much as I personally don't like these specific aspects of being a content creator on a platform like YouTube, it's part of the reality. In order to make money, you've got to attract viewers. And in order to attract viewers, you've got to play to the algorithm. The video titles and the thumbnails, yes, but also frequency of posting, which has led to the rise of a lot of reactionary online content. I'm not a fan of reactionary content because I don't think many of the issues discussed on political platforms should be reacted to before having a chance to digest and process the information that's been presented. There are big topics that are discussed on these platforms that should be contemplated and researched before being discussed with any kind of authority. Thinking before you speak used to be a thing. The algorithm told us no, stop doing that because it's harder for those platforms to monetize and profit off of it. That's a big part of the reason why I don't post very often on social media anymore. I get why people do it. I'm not judging other content creators at all. I respect and follow a lot of them myself. And those people are far more successful than I am. They have way bigger platforms than I do. And I'm sure that they make way more money than I do. But for me, it's just not my style. And I can't do what I'm doing if I'm trying to, do someone else's style. That said, I am incredibly fortunate to be on this platform so that I still get to have a voice somewhere without feeling obligated to just post incessantly on TikTok. The online political media landscape is already being examined and called into question, only on the left, of course. Platforms that allow users to maintain some level of anonymity are being demonized and looked into, such as Discord and Reddit. Our phones and computers are being hacked with spyware by our own government, and all of this is being done in the name of our own safety. Conspiracy theories abound in the wake of the assassination. For example, I heard that perhaps the CIA and/or Mossad killed Charlie Kirk because of his wavering stance on Israel. Maybe the Republicans wanted him killed as their own modern-day Franz Ferdinand in the hopes that they could use his death to justify political persecution of the entire political left. Whether or not that first part is true, I am certainly not saying that it is, and I sincerely hope that it isn't. The second part is exactly what's happening. Republican members of Congress, including Ted Cruz, are even calling for nonprofit groups supporting left-leaning causes to be examined and defunded. The last thing I'll say for now is that it is entirely possible, obviously so, that someone can be a member of the left or right and not like one specific influencer or leader on their own side. There are plenty of political leaders and influencers on the left who I don't always agree with, and I don't particularly resonate with their ways of presenting and analyzing the news of the day. That's fine. Everyone is not for everyone. I am not for everyone, and I'm not trying to be. And that goes back to the fact that while it's understandable that groups become homogenized in general discussions for the sake of simplicity, there is plenty of variability within these very, very large groups. The left is ironically a great example of this because isn't the left sort of known, again, generally speaking, for its infighting? There are plenty of people on the left and on the right for that matter who believe in the overall messages of their political side without engaging with or condoning the more culture war aspects of that same political side. And I'm not arguing for centricity here, so I want that to be clear, but I am always a proponent of regularly touching base with reality, with existing in the real world and remembering that there is life outside of online echo chambers. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.